about training around injuries. I love the factor because till this day you see a lot of extreme views. You see people who tell you to go hard or go home regardless, work with your injury. You see people telling you to no, once you get an injury you stop until you're fully recovered. I think, in my opinion, it's neither the other one. So what do you think?
Yeah, and I think you've experienced like training people with injuries, and that's where really good coaching comes in. I'll tell you honestly, because let's say you come into me and you say, look, Ahmed, some people come in and they don't even tell me they had an injury beforehand so I can plan and prepare. Someone will walk in and be like, oh, by the way, I twisted my ankle, I can't do anything on this foot. Yeah, like go figure out my program. And that's when you straight away have to think, okay, so they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this, let's change this, let's change that. They can't do, for example, push-ups because that foot will be on the floor. They can't do split squats because that foot is going to be on the floor. So let's put rear foot elevated split squat. So you can always manage to train with an injury. The question is that how smart are you as a coach to figure out what are the best exercises for that individual and what's suitable for them? So I always say, like, if you injure one side, you are 25% unhealthy, 75% healthy. So you can still train. You just have to figure out how. And if you're by yourself, I recommend finding a coach who can do that.
And this is the beauty of it. For me, I realize that it is extremely important for any coach, because for me, like, a lot of coaching actually, like, terminologies would vary if you go and ask around, like, people, what do they think a coach is? For me, like, one of the important, like, coaching is mainly about 3 or 4 factors, but one of them is progressions and regressions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I totally believe that a good coach would understand where you are currently at and whether you need to regress or progress this exercise. I totally believe that stopping all collectively, because once you go to a doctor, he recommended you to stop and rest till it's completely, I don't know how it's gonna recover by its own. You'll have to work on it.
Yeah, like, and not bashing doctors or whoever it is who says, like, rest, but don't forget that that's their profession, is to make sure that the person is safe and that they don't get hurt again. So their only logical thing is that, rest until it's better. Yeah. But it's not going to get better. There are certain, like, fascia around the muscle that tighten up, that protect it, so when you do get hurt, relax, don't rest. Do something, go to somebody who's an expert and let them rehab you while going to another expert who will help train you regardless of that injury.
And just to kind of conclude on injuries is that one thing that I like as well is how you communicate with physios directly. You know, it's like there are a lot of physios there, and a lot of good physios actually, but like the gap between the coach and a physio is there. Like you see a lot of physios or a lot of clients who have a different instruction from the physio and have a different instruction from the coach. And the way I think to eliminate that is by the coach kind of just talking to the physio directly.
Exactly.
And having like this unified plan for the client, which is really works magic, because once a client has conflicting views, he wouldn't know which side to pick.
Exactly. And that's where, like, for example, I'll just use one example, Mohammed Jalabi, who actually did the CSCS course with me.
Shout out to Mohammed Jalabi.
Yeah, exactly. The reason why I feel personally he is the best, one of the best here in Bahrain, or if not the best, is not because of his knowledge of all of that is, everyone can have that knowledge. Everyone can have these practices. everyone can imitate, right? But the difference is that he's willing to go the extra mile and say, okay, don't worry. Okay, this is your issue, Aziz. I'm going to speak to your coach and I'm going to tell him this is what you can't do. This is what you can do. Don't stop going to training. Because if you do stop going to training, you're going to actually create more of a negative impact of this injury. And بالعكس, we want you to keep progressing in one way and while we fix one issue. So this is where like he becomes so important, or that communication becomes so important, because he messages me directly and says like, listen, hey bro, I just saw this person, XYZ, go for it. And it gives me that freedom to be able to say, he's like, I know you're an expert, you know how to program design, I just don't want you to do any hinging movements or any single leg movements or any blah blah blah.
So avoid XYZ.
XYZ, figure it out. Everything else you can figure it out because you're good enough.
The question, the $100 million or the $1 million bill question.
Oh God.
Cardio first, then weights. Or cardio first or weights first.
To be honest, it depends. So the reason why I say that is, first and foremost, I would always pick weights. Obviously, I'm a strength coach, but what do you as a client, what can you as a client be most sustainable with first and foremost? This is the most important question. Move away from our coaches' egos and things like, I'm a strength coach and I need to train, or there's certain benefits to strength training X, Y, Z, which is true. Don't get me wrong. There's so much benefits to cardio training and to strength training. But at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the client. And it's about what can they do consistently. If you come to me, Aziz, and say, I can only walk 10 minutes a day, which is, you can consider under maybe cardio or movement. Isn't that a better suggestion for you than me coming to you and say, no, you need to do twice a week, 1 hour strength training sessions? You guys, you're going to come to me and be like, yeah, screw you. I'm walking anyway. I'm going to go because that's what I can do. So that's the first and foremost. All right. Let's put that out there. Then if you're saying that you have the same amount of time and you have to pick between the two, then I personally would always go for strength training because of what we talked about of losing. If you're not working your muscles, you're going to be losing it in a deficit. The best way to, if you're doing a calorie deficit to lose weight or lose fat, the best way to preserve your muscles during that time, which can provide you with benefits throughout, like over the long run, the best way to do that is through strength training and just to maintain the muscles while you lose the fat, not lose fat and muscles. Basic. That's how I would say it. The biggest mistakes that people do is they do cardio first, then they're like, oh, I'm gonna cardio, I'm gonna lose all the weight first, and then I'm gonna start lifting weights. And then they can't. They physically can't because their muscles are all diminished, deteriorated, that now they want to try to lift weights and they don't realize how hard it is to pack on muscle. So they are now like trying to play a losing battle. So for me, do it together. Do the weights and then go on a calorie deficit to lose the fat in a sustainable way. If you want to add cardio to help with the deficit, absolutely fine, but don't miss out on the weight training.
You touched two topics in your answer that are close to me, because one thing that I realized, and I was guilty of until recent time, yani, just because we're like fanatics of our field doesn't make and I know we have the right reasons. Like you're a strength coach because for the right reasons. You've seen it works. You've seen science prove what you do. You've seen logic proves what you do. Every strength coach has it. But like you said, when you talked about ego, is that I see a lot of no matter who in the fitness industry, no matter who in the strength and conditioning industry, no matter who and whatever, like in this training industry, or in the training sector, I see a lot of professionals or a lot of coaches that have, because they're passionate about what they do or they're passionate about their way of training, that they kind of unknowingly kind of supersedes this over anything else.
Yeah.
And when a client comes who like can't cater to their, because of time restrictions, because of lifestyle situations, because of their current position and their like flexibility or mobility or whatever, we tend to show them, no, like we unconsciously make them feel that, oh, you're doing it wrong, you should only do this.
Yeah, or you're lazy.
Exactly.
Or you're not making time for that, which sometimes it is the case. They're not making time for something, but as you said.
Yeah, and this is what I love. It's because, first of all, you're because we say that we're client oriented, right? So we're supposed to actually reflect that on daily basis.
We should be.
So if a client says that, okay, Ahmed, I can't do anything more than walking for 15 minutes because of my family conditions, because of my work conditions, because of anything. So if you can only do that, okay, fine, maybe that's a starting point, and try to like see what we could do with that moving on, building on that. The other factor is that I see a lot of people when they talk about doing cardio first and then doing the weight training, and I can't even add, you've kind of covered it all, but this thing is very popular within people because they think that by losing the weight through cardio first, they're in an ideal position to start building muscle. And like you said, you're actually in the worst position. If you started lifting weights at first, you'll be in a way much better position to getting your goals, not mine, to reaching your goals and achieving what objectives that you have in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where most people have that misconception. They think that the cardio made them lose the weight. Again, it's not the cardio. It is the fact that the cardio increased the amount of energy you burnt, which created a calorie deficit. The reason why it's sometimes more effective for people is because cardio does not stimulate your hunger as much as strength training. Sure. The reason why strength training increases your hunger field more is because it's pushing you, it's taking you to a limit, it's providing your muscles with stimulus that is way beyond what its norm. So it naturally wants to say like, hey, this is not normal for me, I need to make up for it with food, which you don't necessarily have to. You just need to maintain.
Okay, we talked about things that are misconceptions. All right, let's talk about things that are proven but not popular that much. Like you see a lot of people doing Olympic lifts and they don't have the mobility or the skill for it. And that, as you said, is a recipe for disaster, but you don't have to train in that manner. You don't have to train in that way unless you are an Olympic lifter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you need to go deep into that and feel bad if you're not, you work on your skills or anything. I see a lot of people, especially like I came across a lot of things when everybody got creative with working at home during the pandemic. I started seeing the weirdest stuff ever, like handstand push-ups. Why would a general population guy or a normal guy, an average Joe, if you say, why would an average Joe want to do a handstand push-up? Or like, you will never come across that in real life. And that kind of brings me into, like, even Mike Boyle said it. Mike Boyle said we rarely use a barbell around. And he has one of the best facilities in the world. Yeah, and the caliber of clients, the athletes that train with him are like top notch. So if he says that he barely uses barbells, definitely has a reason. So that kind of got me dwelling into, all right, you need to drop down your ego and you need to understand why those exercises, not just because you trained back in the day or you kind of believe that those get results, that they need to be done. So what are your thoughts on like selecting certain exercises, rating, preferring certain exercises over another exercise?
Yeah, so I like that you brought this topic up. Like, I'll give you an example, right? And flow with me here when it comes to this. So let's say, for example, you have a specific goal that you want to achieve, right? And I tell you that there's this feather on this table that can, as if you just pick it up and drop it, pick it up and drop it, it will help you achieve your goal. Would you do it?
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. So naturally, picking up this feather helps you get to your goal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care about the science. You don't care about how it does it. It just does it. For sure, it's proven. You will do that. The same thing works when it comes to exercise prescription, right? So there's so many different ways to get you to a specific goal. And if you can do that with the lightest weight possible or the easiest way possible, why not do that? Why do you have to choose the exercise that you like to help somebody else reach their goal? Or that person needs to do X, Y, or Z because that's what helped me get there. But it doesn't matter what you've done before. If that person can lift a feather to get them to the goal, then let them lift the feather. Even though you only found this feather now and you figured out that this can do that. That's what learning and developing and progressing is all about. So as you said, like, exercise selection is based on the person, the client, not the other way around, based on you and what you know that you've done before in the past and what other people that you follow, which there is such a thing, right? There is something called cognitive bias. Mm-hmm. We are naturally inclined to follow people who voice the same opinions as we do. And I do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. Everybody does. Hey, so that cognitive bias can play a huge role on affecting your client's progress because you're so convinced that person should be bench pressing. For example, I'm not butchering the bench press, but because we bench press as well. But let's say they have to bench press, but they don't. They don't have to do anything. They can walk or do this or do that, and they'll still get their results. So I think, again, as you said, checking your ego at the door and saying, like, what's your reasons behind that? You give me a proper why to why you're doing the X, Y, and Z, and I'll shut up. But it's give me a proper why. Don't say it's because I know somebody who's done it. No, like, if somebody who's done it doesn't mean that you have to give it to other clients. And that's how it is.
And for me, it's kind of insisting on certain things without even reasoning with logic. It kind of flattens the learning curve within the coach.
Yep. You encourage the closed mindset, right? Instead of the open kind of growth mindset instead of fixed mindset. If you're saying that this is the only way, khalas. That means you're in your head, you're saying that it is a fixed mindset. This is the best way.
This is the factor that kind of influenced me the most recently, is that you have to understand that not everybody came from the same background as you. Usually a coach could be previously an all-rounded athlete. You were talking about your athleticism back in the day, back in school. So you did everything, even as figure skating. Yeah. You know? So you have a mobility that maybe a lot of your clients don't.
Yeah.
So if you expect that, just because you did a certain exercise and it did you well back in the day, or it did you well with your first clients, doesn't mean that it's gonna do you well with those clients. Those clients maybe don't have the mobility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't have the stability.
And this is where, so I'm very hard-headed with what I give my clients, but that's not because it's coming from a fixed mindset. But it's because I've learned and I've adapted, and I've said, this is what works. This is what works for the time being. If you're able to give me a counter argument to change my mind, I'm completely open to it. But don't come to me and say this is just my opinion without stating the reasons for your opinion, the logic behind it, the ideas that come from what you believe.
I tell them, okay, explain to me why.
Yeah.
Did you include a certain exercise in your program?
Yeah.
If you fail to justify it, you shouldn't be doing that exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you're supposed to transfer anything. And I like the fact that, for example, you have how many ways to squat? A gazillion ways. You could be creative with squatting.
Yeah, you won't even be able to count.
Yes. So, yet, I like how the fact that a lot of the coaches or the strength professionals justify, okay, I like rear foot elevated squats, or I like single leg squatting, and they justify it to you because as simple as I remember even having this conversation with you and like simply just saying it translates better into squats. You know, back in the day, even till today, we have sorry for the word, like we have ass to grass squatting. You know, they believe that this is the only way of acceptable squatting. You know, and science debunks the whole thing. Like I was reading an article about quarter squats and how quarter squats are the most effective way into improving your vertical jump.
Imagine.
You know? Quarter squats.
Yeah.
And people are still talking about like
ass to
grass and going all the way down.
Yeah. Now, if you're an Olympic lifter, you need to ass to grass.
Exactly.
Because when you catch a clean, most of the time you're catching a clean in a deep squat, right? So then that's fine, right? But if you're looking for maybe improvements in vertical jump, right? Obviously, there's no sport that is just vertical jumping. So maybe someone might not benefit from just a quarter squat, but that's a really good example of if someone says that, and there's the research that shows that a quarter squat can be beneficial to a vertical jump, why are you so determined that it has to be ass to grass? It makes no sense, yani.
And that brings us back to the whole understanding of why you're training, or what are you training for?
Yeah.
If you're training to be an Olympic lifter, you have to focus on what makes a good Olympic lifter.
Yeah.
If you train as an endurance athlete, you have to focus on what makes you a good endurance athlete. Whether it's mobility demands, conditioning demands, strength demands, whatever of the sports. And this is what I like. People kind of, I thought, to be honest, before coming, one of the things that I noticed first joining in your programming is that the programming suits everyone, you know, and having a diverse clientele. And I got, I touched this with your mother, actually, like the way you trained your mother, and even your mother's testimonial in you. I remember it was one session where it was just me and her, and she was talking about how she was, how her habits were before training, actually starting and training. She said, after doing this for a while, I feel the energy I feel is of 10 years before.
Imagine.
You know, so the impact. And then I realized, you need to train even senior people how to squat, how to deadlift, single leg work, balance work, you know, cater to them, but doesn't mean that you should eliminate them, because a lot of people say, no, you shouldn't give them exercise because they have back pains. Back pains is because of not exercising or being in a certain way.
You can see it in the gym where there would be maybe my mom, who's I don't want to say her age, because if she listens to this, she'll kill me.
She'll kill you.
She's an older client, right? And then I have athletes who are coming in at the same session, but doing the same thing, but a little bit different, with a little bit more advanced, with a little bit more technique, where we know that ankle range of motion is a little bit better, the hip mobility is a little bit better, and then we have kids, right, who used to come and train, who they had no mobility either, or they had too much mobility, and they were just so weak because they were just sedentary for so long. So you have to be able to cater to each and every person, and that's where the progressions and regressions come in, to say okay, this person they're all doing squats, right? But one person's going to be doing squats with an assisted TRX. The other person's going to be doing a squat with a heel lift because of restricted ankle range of motion. Then somebody's going to be doing a goblet squat with normal ankle range of motion and heavier weight with a 2-second pause, right? Like it's the same squat, but it's tailored to each and every person based on their injury history, based on their age, based on whatever it is, training age as well. So,
and it prevents them from hitting, because one of the worst thing as a client is that, especially like the clients who are consistent, it's a nightmare for you to reach plateau, you know. So you don't wanna plateau for any reason. And a good coach would help prevent that, because in your progressions and your overload, like over time, and it will kind of overall translate into better movement, into better performance. Because the good thing about the strength and conditioning field is that it could be measured in ways,
in numbers,
right? And numbers never lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's where like the vertical jump comes in, right? Like if somebody doesn't jump as high after 6 weeks, you ask them the question like, okay, what happened? Right? Did you train consistently? Most of the time, if their vertical jump isn't as high, they'll know that they didn't train as well. Or they, instead of coming twice a week, they were only managing once a week over a 6-week period. And you can tell them, you call them on it. You say like, look, there's accountability here. You've been only coming once a week. Obviously your vertical jump is going to drop. Or let's say they didn't sleep well, or their nutrition has been messed up over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Again, you assess and you ask. And then that's where it kind of becomes a bit more of a kind of give and go kind of accountability factor. So